This may seem like a random video to make, but I can assure you, it's been racking my brain for a while now. Mainly this video started back when I tried to play Genshin Impact again, and I just couldn't get into it, and it made me realize just how bad gaming has gotten. Not to say that Genshin's a terrible and bad game, but with the level of battle passes and daily content that you have to do throughout the game, it makes me really realize just how big of a chore gaming has gotten to be than a fun experience. So in this video, I just wanted to talk about what made gaming fun from my experiences back in the day. Starting off with the limited number of classics I played back from the PS1 and PS2 era would be Final Fantasy VII, the game that genuinely changed the gaming industry forever. What made it so innovative that the entire industry took cues from? Well, a lot of things actually. CG cutscenes started to become the norm to see, graphics, unique in-depth storytelling, an explorable open world. A lot of these things are very commonplace nowadays, despite this game coming out in 1997. Also, despite doing what a lot of open world games do nowadays, I bet a lot of people still go back and want to play through the story, grind some levels, defeat some bosses they haven't defeated before, and make their materia builds as broken as possible. You might say it's nostalgia glasses, but I beg to differ. In fact, I would say what made the PS1 and PS2 games so unique is the fact that they mostly never told you everything that was hiding in the games. You see, you had to use game facts to know where to find Knights of the Round Table, or what that small red thing beneath the golden saucer was, or even how to unlock characters that were optional and were very missable in Disc 1. Hell, even Emerald Weapon is very missable. Regardless to say, Final Fantasy VII did a lot. Although I could talk about it more, I don't think it needs to be. So let's talk about another game like Crash. Crash solely relies on its gameplay rather than its story, and it does this remarkably well, that it ended up getting 2 more games on the same system. But instead of being the same shit we find in Ubisoft titles, Crash's moveset was actually innovated on, like being able to slide, for instance. Sounds weird for a Bandicoot to slide, but in terms of gameplay, it moved smoothly, and innovated on Crash's moveset kit, which led to the third one going nuts with it. Going nuts with double jumping, going nuts with other mechanics that Crash ended up getting, because that game is actually pretty nuts. I actually didn't play Crash 3 till the remasters came out, but I can still have appreciation for what Naughty Dog was able to do back in the day. I think I talked about what I needed to for the PS1 era, or what I played of that system, so let's talk about the PS2 and what those games innovated on. Jak and Daxter, another amazing Naughty Dog title. What made this game so unique? What made this game so unique was the fact there were no loading screens in between areas, which a lot of people take for granted nowadays. But would you believe me if only one guy understood the code to make that possible, which is why it's extremely hard to actually port the game to other platforms. Although some talented people have taken the challenge to decode the game and make the game playable on PC natively through OpenGoal, which is what you are seeing now, so please check them out. Another thing upon Jak and Daxter that made it fun, even following it into the other sequels, was Jak's base moveset. Although you can use Eco, the power-ups in the game, it never really took away the experience of just using Jak's base moveset, like rolling and jumping. It really might sound small, but makes the player have some sort of feedback to keep doing it throughout the game. Mainly because it's faster than running, but it's just still fun to roll and jump. These movesets can also be manipulated to glitch out the map in certain cases, either in Jak 1, Jak 2, Jak 3, or with the jet port in Jak 2 and 3. And with 3, you can also manipulate Light Jak to fly outside the map, which is really cool. And it might sound weird to just go over glitches, but that's what makes games fun too. When someone patches a glitch, it can be trivial to whether or not the community actually wants it or not. So patching these glitches can ruin the Jak and Daxter experiences if they decide to remake it in the future. Platformers nowadays, I feel, lack some sort of iconic duo in giving players good movesets to keep wanting to play the platformer. Ball and Wonderland definitely failed to take notes from a PS2 game. I think Mario Odyssey was one of the games that actually made me feel what I've been looking for since the Jak series ended. How about we talk about horror? Silent Hill 2. I may have played this on an emulator, but this game is honestly one of the best horror games ever made, and I've ever played. It's really a shame nobody has managed to get anywhere close to this game, not even Konami when they made sequels for the game. I mean, yeah, it's the same atmosphere, but just something about traveling in the town of Silent Hill that's clouded in fog and having no idea what might jump out there at you. And the only source to know something is in front of you is your radio, making eerie sounds to be like, Heyo, something's right in front of you. I genuinely believe this game had one-of-a-kind stories like BioShock does, your first time playing it. One of the things that you probably can't get over is Silent Hill 2's soundtrack, and how immersive it is to give the level of isolation in a game like no other has before, even to this day, even in movies. Talking towards Kingdom Hearts now, I know, what a transition that was. Let's first talk about the gameplay, because this is a big deal. Real-time combat wasn't exactly polished for the PS1, and it was very hard to execute, but somehow with early titles such as Kingdom Hearts, it was now possible. Even though KH1's combat is kinda basic, it had potential for the next game to get even better. No, I do not mean the card game. I mean, of course, Kingdom Hearts 2, or even Kingdom Hearts 2 Final Mix, when it really took it to new heights. Kingdom Hearts 2 Final Mix is probably peak real-time combat games in general. Besides, it does get overruled by the king of Devil May Cry.
This party's getting crazy. Let's rock.
You see, Kingdom Hearts 2 Final Mix has the right amount of style to not feel overwhelming as it does in Kingdom Hearts 3. It's fast and responsive with every animation Sora does. It's not a perfect system by no means, it's very cheesable. But the cheese is what makes it fun to some extent. Even with that cheese, the player's skill really matters if you attempt to play this game at level 1. Which in this game, there's actual balance on level 1 critical mode, unlike future entries in the series. Also, Kingdom Hearts holds up graphically. I think it's so well done, the way the facial animations were animated back in 2002, that they hold up today even, especially if you still get that occasional generic PS2 face. I just think the facial expressions within these cutscenes make it have a powerful impact overall on what story it's trying to tell, even if it is a little wacky. And although there isn't a generic PS2 face in Kingdom Hearts 3, it does severely feel like Sora's facial animation when he's talking about something serious in the game is lacking, and I can't explain it other than the fact that I'm just so used to probably his Kingdom Hearts 2 model and how his facial expression would be so high quality that it all kind of just blends together compared to those good in-depth moments in which the facial animation was on point in Kingdom Hearts 2, which really leads to the impact of what Kingdom Hearts has, its charm to make you feel something within these cutscenes, even though the story is really wacky. So how about Final Fantasy X, a game that can be summed up by saying it's a journey to Xanarkand? But in fact, it's so much more. The game has such a unique cast of characters, and although it is a bit limited with its cutscenes, it still conveys a story filled with hardships, confusion, and love. It's filled with such beautiful areas and CG cutscenes that they even still hold up to this day really well, despite the fixed camera angles. But to top it all off, the banger OST this game holds. Although this might be the last of what people think is one of the best Final Fantasy games, as they were still Squaresoft, at the time, the tide of the era of Square Enix was vastly approaching. More on this later. Honorable mentions to the PS2 generation, and although I didn't experience these games on the PS2, I still appreciate what these two games brought to the table, with Devil May Cry being a result of Resident Evil 4 development and having so many different ideas. Devil May Cry brought unique combos and of course the stylish meter to action games today. And with Resident Evil 4, I just gotta say, Leon Kennedy and his animations to kick zombies and everything else in between, because that game is still pretty good besides the tank controls. As do with such great things, they must come to an end. And here comes the PS3 era. The PlayStation 3/Xbox era of gaming was a weird one. At the start, we had some mighty fine banger hits throughout their lifespan. However, it started to descend into what we know as gaming today, known as modern gaming or the dark age of gaming. To start things off, you had Final Fantasy XIII, a game I can even admit still has stunning visuals to this day, a pretty decent OST and coolly designed characters. However, Final Fantasy XIII starts off just really way too fast paced. There's too much going on, too much story elements going on all at once, and then it explains to you later on after maybe the 3 or 4 hour mark, but even then you're still kind of just lost, and then you're playing as a different character at one point, and again it gets kind of just chaotic, just how the story is. I think this game is good and it probably has some really good elements in it, but for me it's just a lot to take in all at once like that. Even Final Fantasy VII, having to start off with, fighting guards at the beginning, even in the remake, it kind of knows how to pace itself, where Barrett in the elevator will explain stuff about the life force and, the planet, and then it goes on to actually treating it like, you're in a serious situation, kind of like what they're fighting for, and, Cloud just doesn't care. Or in Final Fantasy X's case, where you get this whole backstory about Titus's dad, where, okay, you see like how big of a hotshot he is and why Titus hates him at a point later on as he develops, even though a lot of crazy stuff happens after the fact. So although I don't think necessarily Final Fantasy XIII made gaming fun, it did innovate graphics in a big way. And although the PS3 era and the Xbox 360 era kind of set the graphics department in its ways, it is worth mentioning at the very least that Final Fantasy XIII looks pretty, but kind of didn't do everything right as a Final Fantasy game / JRPG. Because even my brother, a longtime Final Fantasy fan, got stuck in a hallway simulator pretty much because he was trying to grind to beat the boss. And yeah, he couldn't beat that boss specifically because he couldn't buy items, he couldn't do what he needed to do to beat the boss. Because he was stuck in a hallway where he couldn't go back, and he just was forced to keep fighting this boss that he kept losing at. I would say that I do want to return to Final Fantasy XIII. However, I really don't have a current way to play right now because Square Enix still has not fixed it for Steam. Like, if I have to follow a 13-page guide on to fix your game, Square Enix, it should not be sold on Steam. It should be fixed. Like, there's no excuses for it. You're taking money still. Uncharted. Uncharted actually is a pretty decent game that had a lot of collectibles in it, lots of like cool little visual segments, and definitely a lot of scripted events. I think this is what started the scripted events sequence of games that made it kind of try to be a movie essentially, which yes, I do like the visual aspects of it, but no, I don't like my game to play as a movie. But what I will say is it definitely kind of defined the third-person shooter genre better than what we had in prior years to Uncharted. So I honestly just commend Naughty Dog to be able to pump out visuals from just starting from Uncharted to go to Uncharted 2, then 3. The glow up is there and it's crazy. And then we of course had The Last of Us on PS3, if you remember. I know it just got re-released for the PC and PS5, but I think the era in which these games released in was a really fun experience, and I definitely had fun playing it on the PS4. However, it is starting to become dated, as we've seen with The Last of Us Part 2, in which that game faced a lot of criticism in terms of story and pretty much practically the same gameplay and scripted events, and it's just becoming a dated experience in which everyone's starting to shy away from because they want something different and not something that's always the same just because it keeps working for said company. But I think what made Uncharted fun overall was Nathan Drake, but on top of that, it was the cast of characters that also made the story interesting, made the story fun at times, and overall kept the player engaged into the characters for them to keep playing and be like, well, this is a really fun experience because I like where the story's going. And with The Last of Us Part 2, it wasn't just the story that was wrong, it was the gameplay itself as well. The design in general is just dated by this point because Naughty Dog has stuck with the same design philosophy for, I don't know, 10 years now, which is actually kind of crazy to think about. Yeah, I think it's even more because Uncharted came out in 2007. But of course, there's a lot of game developers doing the same formula, not just Naughty Dog. Have you seen Ubisoft with the Assassin's Creed series? Although these were very compelling games at first, I think up until Brotherhood is where it started to become a bit much. A lot of people say they loved Assassin's Creed 3, but I would say that's where the series started to take a nosedive. Black Flag kind of saved it, but everything after Black Flag I think was kind of a meh experience, and you're experiencing the same thing. But initially what made these games fun, of course, was the characters, like Ezio, Jesus Christ. And people definitely had fun with the mechanics at first, but I think when the game starts to do it over and over and over again, like a Call of Duty, it starts to get extremely repetitive. And that's the problem with a lot of these games. They all felt the same. They did small innovations, but they didn't innovate in the sense of, yeah, we're just going to keep this formula and keep going this direction instead of switching it up, if you will. I think what made the Assassin's Creed series at the time so fun was because it was something different and something just out of left field that no one really saw coming. And sadly, they just couldn't innovate it enough for it to keep going in the right direction, because it definitely has lost its ways, I feel like, and it still is a series that's going on and on and on. It's like Far Cry and so on. I know I'm bleeding into the problems of modern gaming, which will be in part 2 of this video series, but it's just kind of where I'm sitting here. So enough about that. Let's talk about first-person shooters.
50,000 people used to live here. Now it's a ghost town.
Now this is where FPS genres started to take off, like Call of Duty, like Halo, and a lot of these things. Now, Halo was one of the key innovations on the PS2/Xbox original hardware. However, I feel there was a lot of crappy FPS games during the PS2 and prior years, up until the Xbox 360 and PS3 generation. So whatever Infinity Ward and Bungie did this generation, they did it right. They did everything great. Even though Halo 1 and Halo 2 were great, even for the time of being on the OG Xbox, I think Halo 3 was. All of those ideas meshed into one and innovated greatly on the prior games, while Call of Duty 4 did something amazing, which was make FPS games more comfortable to control, as Halo did, but made it even better and smoother, if that makes sense. It's more of a personal preference thing. Although I think the Halo series was something really remarkable for its time, would you believe I got into this series at 4 when they sort of modernized it? I prefer the older ones, although I'll never forget the 360 Halo 4 days and how fun they were. However, I have to place absolute respect on what the OG 3 did than what the newer Halo games do now. Like, Sergeant Johnson is probably one of the best characters and never was really replaced, but they instead made really shitty characters in every single 343 Halo game. Sergeant Johnson was an icebreaker character, but also was one of the best characters. Nowadays, it feels like Halo goes for this way too serious approach. While Master Chief would come across as a badass for his one-liners, it feels like nowadays they continue to screw up Master Chief's character. And I guess without spilling the beans or going into further depth about 343 screwing up Halo, let's just talk about what made Halo work. Of course, the story was definitely really cool, but mainly, it was the multiplayer focus. Now, it was a party game, right? But don't get it twisted here. This game had some mighty fine custom games. The custom creations people were making that you could just download onto your file share or put it on your file share and then other people can download it was so amazing back then. And it still should be a feature now. But instead, you have to kind of do stuff through third-party stuff, and you can only really do it if you have a PC. This should be a feature in a modern Halo game. But mainly, I had so much fun playing Jenga Wall. I forget what this mode's called, but literally being in the mongoose and like 10 feet in the air, throwing off your friends off the platform with mongooses, that was fun. Like, everything that Halo had done back then was just fun in terms of custom creations, and that is not emphasized enough in modern Halo games. I think now that Forge has come out, it is, but we're still missing file share. That should be a feature and make people come back to the game, because that's why people played Halo back in the day, at least for me. Some people played it competitive. I didn't, but I really liked the multiplayer enough to keep playing public matches, but it still stinks to see how Halo has unfolded. But I just had so much fun playing Halo 4 custom games, Halo 3 custom games especially, even when the game was pretty much dead. I was still able to find people's file shares and get maps. I was able to actually play custom games with my friends, then have a small lobby put together and just have a good time. So it wasn't really just the story alone that carried Halo, it was really the multiplayer component and the fun custom games that people love to play that are not present currently yet. And the place that you should be able to get custom levels and file shares is not present within Infinite yet, which is really disappointing, and you have to go through third parties and so on. And I know I keep the modern side of gaming, but what made gaming fun is the fact of the shareability that this generation brought with custom games, because without the content creation of the players making these maps, making these game modes, without file share, this game would have not succeeded in the ways that it did even past its peak. So in my opinion, I feel like this is what mainly made this generation fun. However, while Halo had all this going on for it, Call of Duty 4, Modern Warfare 2, World at War, and Black Ops had some of the best campaigns for FPSs, even for the time, and probably the entire genre is just blown out of the water with these campaigns alone. The iconic lines of 1,000 people used to live here, but now it's a ghost town. I'm probably phrasing that wrong. The numbers, Mason, what do they mean? And just some of the best iconic missions for the series within this generation. It was something really awesome to experience. And it really felt like they cared at the time about how the players would feel playing these games. And I know I have the most controversial take, but man, I think Modern Warfare 3 was the downslope for the games for me going forward. Why, you might say? Well, I don't know, something about Modern Warfare 2's gameplay just felt good. Not just, I guess, the imbalancing of it. I mean, just generally the gunplay, just everything about Modern Warfare 2 felt better than Modern Warfare 3. And if you didn't know, the people who made Modern Warfare 2 ended up going on to make Titanfall, and that game felt really great at the time. Sadly, they're stuck in Apex Legends land and probably won't make a Titanfall 3, but a man can hope. Now, I talked this big game about multiplayer, but where did I play most of my time in Call of Duty? So it was in Zombies. Something about the Zombies mode made it really unique rather than it being a generic Zombies game. It became something so much more with the characters themselves, whether it was the announcer or the cast saying some outlandish stuff. At the time, I just thought it was really epic to play solo to get to those higher rounds and boast about it. And then especially playing it with the boys. Shout out to my boy Nike Voltage, Nike Ultimate, Jay Beeman, who helped out with this video and who's been still playing Zombies with me occasionally here and there for probably the last 10 years. So thank you, man. Painkiller, because he did help me with some Easter eggs at a point because we were missing someone, I think, and he was the fill spot, and you know, he definitely did a good job of doing that. And I think it was the Black Ops 3 time, so yeah, we definitely needed him. The Easter eggs were a trip too, especially Ascension when stuff really started to get crazy with the Easter egg quests for zombies. And I really got into Call of Duty on Black Ops 1, and I was like 11 at the time. It was my first shooter game. It was kind of nuts. I used to be scared of Call of Duty Zombies, but somehow I just was like, yep, I'm doing this. But I think what made Zombies so fun is playing co-op, whether it was to do with the Easter egg for the achievements, or it was just to survive rounds for fun, even if it was repetitive from time to time. This was a community-driven thing, because after Nocturne Unton, they realized what the players were kind of just nitpicking and going off of, and then they created new maps based on that. And again, it's the driving force that a community is making and shaping a thing to be created, even if it is officially through the developers. I personally found it fascinating with the whole like World War II and time traveling thing. I don't know, that was always something that made me keep coming back to it. But of course, as time went on, Jimmy Selinsky, the original creator for it, I don't know, made the story kind of do some crazy stuff. So it's, you know, it's a bit messy nowadays, but I think for the time it was definitely something cool to experience. I think the other thing that made it cool was the crazy wonder weapons you'd get just through the box hits or doing the Easter egg. You don't know what it's going to do at first, but when you shoot it for the first time, you know. And you definitely want to keep getting that weapon repeatedly over and over again. My personal favorites are, of course, the Thunder Gun, the Vando Alpha DG2, and the Ray Gun Mark II, and I'm probably missing out a few, but I think those are my top 3 in terms of the ones that I really liked and just the cool effects they would do to the zombies. And I think the Argothia thing is cool, but sadly it's kind of the same thing as the Thunder Gun. It just doesn't shoot them far away to that extent. And I think another one would definitely be the bows. Even though they're broken, they're just cool to just see the effects happen in-game. Which, if I'm talking about that, the staffs as well, the staffs are definitely a pain in the ass to get. So why did I take this whole section to just talk about Call of Duty Zombies? Nostalgia factor? Maybe a little bit, but the whole point is, you can have an already game that's already sitting there, but you can create this fun mode also on the side that could potentially make it fun for the player. You see, you don't need to just develop the game for the sole purpose to develop the game. You can make a fun mode that could potentially take off, and for it to be eventually community driven for the players to keep coming back to your game. So in my opinion, this generation was definitely very much driven on community driven efforts through the community to actually make these things exist now. Because without the community, I don't think Call of Duty Zombies would have reached as big of heights as it did. Without the community, I don't think Halo Forge or custom games or file sharing would have been as popular as it was.
Honorable mentions from the PS3 generation goes to Borderlands 2, a game that I have like 30 days in, I think. From when I played it on 360 and Xbox One, I've grinded out so many loot midgets, so many bosses that, I don't know, I just couldn't stop playing. And honestly, it's probably one of the best, if not the best, loot and shooter co-op experience that I've ever played, because it just is just so seamless to stay with your friends throughout the entire experience of Borderlands 2. And overall, the story is amazing, and just the gameplay itself, everything about Borderlands 2 is amazing. Sadly, it's not quite a full-length section in this video. Can't really say why. Maybe I might make my own separate video on it, but I don't think it really needs to be. All I have to really say is amazing story, amazing co-op experience, and move on. Because the next game I'm mentioning is Battlefield. Another honorable mention, because I talked a great deal, I should say, about shooters. Battlefield lost its way with 2042, and I just have to say Battlefield 3 is one of the best games for a modern era of Battlefield. I am saddened the complete state of what Battlefield is in today, but I can just appreciate what Bad Company 2 did with its campaign and with its multiplayer, along with Battlefield 3's. I just like the gunplay and the feeling of 3 more than I do 2's, but I like 2's, I guess, destructibility and being able to destroy the objective. instead of needing to plant it and rush all the time like you have to in 3 and all future Battlefields going forward. And the thing about 3 that really made it good is the time to kill. The sponginess of the enemies just made it feel more satisfying when you got kills in the game. Yesterday, something quite impactful happened. My grandfather ended up passing away. It's 7:30 in the morning, and I haven't slept yet, and I just really want to finish this video. This video was more than a year in the working, and a lot of stuff has happened in between making this video, and so this is what this video means to me as someone who's played video games for years, all my life, even through the worst of my troubles. And it stinks to see what the industry has become, but I at least just wanted to make my video on what I found to be what made gaming fun. And I hope I did somewhat accomplish that. I know I'm probably wearing nostalgia glasses all the way through it, but what I find to what makes a game great is the gameplay first, the graphics secondary, and just an overall community-driven efforts in having community tools in being able to make custom games, levels, you name it. Because at the end of the day, the industry just makes you feel like it's such a chore to even get into a game that is a free-to-play / gacha game. Or even the recent Call of Duty having dailies to unlock attachments, which is absolutely ridiculous. So with that all being said, I hope you enjoyed this video. And with that, I'll see you guys in the next one. Peace.